Okay, 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 okay. Excellent. First things first over here on this TikTok side. Let's get that going. Loading effects. All right. Okay. Okay, good. I don't know what's wrong with Facebook again. Looks like you guys are not meant to get our live stream. All right, YouTube, you look good. Facebook, you look good. Or not Facebook, but TikTok, you look good. Facebook is all screwed up. I don't know why. This is the second time that that's happened with the Facebook stream. All right, they might just be out again. All right, not going to dwell too long on that. It is what it is. Okay, if you are on the TikTok screen, a prospectus just popped up. That FXD1 2018 025 is the next bond in the bond ladder for everybody who did our end of year special. There are only 2 spots in the end of year special left. So everybody who went ahead and did that last year, the first sellout, everybody who was part of the first sellout and sold out the end of year special for the first wave before we bought the extra land, you guys are all already set up. So your central bank accounts are all set up, your trust funds are all set up. So anybody who was part of that is completely set up, and they will be receiving this bond in their bond ladder, possibly as the first bond, um, might be the second. So if you guys got the last bond, this will be your second bond. This will be your February bond if you got a January bond. If not, then this will be your first bond, and then you're completely set up. You'll get all the rest moving forward, right? So, as you guys know, the end of year special ends February 15th. For this reason, right? Getting these bonds is a monthly endeavor. As you can see, the first bond, the FXD3, does not fit our criteria. It is more than 10%, so that's great, but it's only 8 years. So it doesn't hit the 10-year criteria, so it's not included. This FXD1 is a 13%, 13.4 to be exact percent return on investment. You will be paid that for the next 17.3 years. So you have 17 years where that money will be coming in. And is a June and December payout. So this bond covers June and December for those clients who are already in on the end of year special. Also, those clients who sold out the first time on the end of year special, those clients, your foundations are built. So go to your blue, check your messages. There will be pictures of your land, your foundations in there, and all of that, and your title deeds should have been uploaded as well and are on file with the lawyer's office. Okay, so if you were part of the first sellout, not the second, do not be blowing up our email knowing daggone well that you were not part of the group that sold out on the Thanksgiving week, right? Or the day, or the Black Friday or whatever, the day after Thanksgiving. So if you were not part of that, then you are not ready yet. You'll be ready by the end of this month. So you'll start getting stuff in the next couple of days. Um, but you were not part of that first group. You're not ready yet. Your foundations aren't built yet. You don't have title deeds yet. All right. For that second group, you're gonna see that stuff. Probably actually, you'll see all of it by the middle of February. But your trust deed stuff should be done um, this week or next week. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying not to confuse you with any of my other group. We have three groups of trust fund people right now. So you're either this week or next week. All right. If you are part of the second wave, or you received your paperwork for the second wave, but you haven't signed the service agreement and you haven't made the wire, um, even even if we get to February 15th and you haven't sent that back, you'll just get a notice of disqualification. All right. So you still have to, even though you started the process ahead of time, you still have to be in on time, or else we can't guarantee the bond letter. If you are willing to sign an indemnification, in case we don't get you the bond ladder and you come on late, then we might consider going ahead and letting you come on late. And you just won't have a guarantee that you're going to get the bond ladder done. In which case, that worst case scenario of that is you just do it next year. But part of what we're delivering, part of our deliverables is to get you that bond ladder this year. So if you don't give us enough time to do it, then we won't sign that contract with you. Hey Nola, how are you? All right. Yes, it is the withholding taxes. Actually, the withholding taxes are actually great. Most of our trust fund clients really, really appreciate the tax simplicity if you're handling your trust the right way. So the way that it works is, if you're being funded by securities like this, um, withholding tax is paid up front, all right, or withheld by whoever is giving you, the money. All right, so in this case, it's the Central Bank of Kenya. So it says 10% withholding tax is there. That's awesome. You pay the 10% withholding tax up front before your money hits the account. It's 10% of your ROI, not 10% of your principal, okay? So it's 10% of the ROI. And then you'll get a tax certificate at tax time showing that withholding tax was paid, right? And then that's a final tax. You don't have to do anything else as far as tax filings are concerned. Your tax is good, final tax is paid, right? So there are no like profit, you're not paying profit taxes or anything like that if you handle the trust the right way. All the money that'll come into the trust will already have a final withholding tax attached, and then your trust tax liability locally anyway is not that it's nil, but it's already paid. So it's already paid up every time that you file your taxes, and you never touched the money. The money was always withheld at a different place and submitted to KRA on your behalf. So the taxes are really super duper simple. Aha, you've been paying attention. Yes, as long as it is a grantor trust, you are correct. As long as it is a non-grantor trust, you are correct about that. If it is a grantor trust, then it is not simple. If you're an American, that's an American distinction. So if you're an American and it is a grantor trust, then you will have a ton of tax paperwork to do. If it is a non-grantor trust, then it's incredibly simple, super simple. No, unfortunately, Diaspora Freedom Initiative is a U.S. company. It does not have a branch in Kenya. Um, we pay Kenyan vendors to do business in Kenya. So you wouldn't be able to work for a U.S. company unless you had a U.S. work permit. We're thinking of opening a Kenyan branch soon, though. So the only way that you can work with us is if you work for one of our vertical integration chains. So if you work for our law firm, which you would need to be an advocate of the High Court of Kenya in order to work there, or if you work for our architectural firm, which means that you need to have an architect's license to work there, or if you work for a general contractor, those are the only ways that you can work with us currently, but you can't work directly for Diaspora Freedom Initiative yet. Hmm. Yeah, we do the trust fund for those. Oh, sorry. So the question was about boarding school. We set up the trust fund for those, but we don't manage it. That's managed by the trustee company, right? So the trustee company manages it, but we write the trust fund for those. Yes, yes, of course you can pick your school, right? So what'll happen is the trust fund will pay the school fees, tax exempt, pay the room and board, tax exempt, of course. So everything that's happening for the kid is all tax exempt under the law, right? And so what'll happen is the trust fund will manage those things, and then typically people will get a bond ladder, and the bond ladder will actually create the money to do all those things passively, so that way you're not pumping money into the trust, to pay those things, and then you might cross over into like a non-grantor situation, um, versus a grantor situation. So if you're an American and you're pumping money into the trust every month, then we might have a grantor issue. So typically they do a bond ladder as well, and then the bond ladder pays all the school fees for the kids and all of that, and then the trustee has a team that is essentially on call 24/7. So like if your kid breaks their leg or something like that, the school would call the trustee, of course. We would then dispatch somebody to the hospital. They would call the parents, and all of that. And then for holidays and stuff, we put the kids on the plane, send them back, pick them up from the airport, bring them back to wherever they're living, whether they're on campus, off campus, whatever. So yeah, but we do is make sure that the actual trust deed is solid, and has all the powers that you need it to have, and then the trustee company would take over and do like the guardianship work. Yeah, let me type the trustee company to you. There you go. All right. Jeez. The Facebook Live is on and off. So sorry for you Facebook guys. You guys keep getting cut off and put back on, cut off. I don't know what's going on over there. All the other live streams are fine. Just lost it again. Yeah. I don't know what that's about. All right. Yeah, yeah. No, it's 185 all inclusive. So that's a beautiful thing. Here, let me show you if I can. So this place, it's a row home, basically, right? So it's attached to two other units. It's on less than a 50 by 100 plot. Uh, and it does have a really good ocean view, though. Like it has a view directly of the ocean. It's a three bedroom. The bedrooms are fairly small. The master bedroom's like okay. And it costs $400,000. Now it'll sell, right? So let's be clear about that. It'll definitely sell, but that's the difference between buying built and building yourself, right? So we're building what, a bigger house, close to the beach, um, way more square footage, still three bedrooms, you know, and you get the trust, and you get the bonds, and you get your immigration status, and it's 185. So That's the difference. Now it's an end of year special, right? Typically, the 185 would have only covered the house, not the bonds and the immigration status and everything else. But because of our Chinese suppliers, we were able to get dramatic discounts. Um, and if you follow us, you saw that happen in real time, right? So if you follow us, you saw us in China a couple months ago. We stayed there for an entire month, and we negotiated all these deals. So because of those incredible deals that we negotiated, if I say so myself, we're able to give the entire package for just the price of the house. So pretty unique proposition for you guys. But yeah, so that's what that house looks like. This is what the house you get looks like. Uh-oh. I'm waiting to see if that image will upload. Hey, how's it going, Chief? Good to you. All right, Rose Shaggy. Doesn't want to work. All right, let's see now. It does not want to put that image up. I wonder why that is. Let's see if I can give you a view of the house that's included here. All right, I'll give you the 3D. Yeah, it doesn't want to give you the other one. So that's what it looks like. So you get a much bigger house. Um, I'm still going to try to show you the better version of it, but it just doesn't want to show you that image. But yeah, so you're standalone, got your own land, you got more land, you got double the land, got double the square footage, still 3 bedrooms though, just bigger, and less than half the price, right? So that's the difference between building and buying. That's essentially how that works. Yeah, so you can adjust it. Yep, you obviously have to pay more, but you can adjust how much passive income you get per month, right? So the our standard target would give our clients 50,000 local currency a month as passive. That will not cover somebody in say Nairobi, but it will pay for everything here, right? So at the beach in Diani, you're covered. Um, Now we had larger families that just either wanted more. There are some families that are just like, look, I just want to feel better, so I just want more, passive income. And some families are like larger, and they're like, no, no, we do need more monthly income. And then you can adjust it. Yeah, so you just get more bond, and we can figure out exactly how much more you need, and just add that to it. But and a lot of the folks, I'd say 90% of the folks are not giving up work, right? Like they can if they wanted to, but a lot of the folks are not just living off the bonds. They're using the bonds as like additional income, right? So they're like padding themselves with the bonds. But it also puts them in a position of like if their employer give them some gruff, or somebody says something slick to them, they can flip them the bird and call it a day because they have passive income that's coming in for the next 10 years minimum, right? So we just showed the bond, the second bond in the ladder for some people, first bond in the ladder for others, depending on when they came on board. But that one was 17 years. So that money is guaranteed to them from the Central Bank of Kenya for 17 years, right? So it just depends on where people get in. Yes, you can do a bond ladder with us without having to do a house build. Thank you, Chief. Without having to do a house build. Yeah. We get a lot of like so our generational wealth clients will do it all the time. They'll do a bond ladder to increase the compounding effect of their generational wealth trust, right? So they'll have the bond ladder. It'll be paying every month 50,000 into the 50,000 local currency into the trust, which will increase. the compounding effect of the money. So you could put 3 grand away for your grandkids, and in 60 years it might be like $780,000, right? From $3,000. All right, that's great, fine. But if you do a bond ladder, now the bond is paying into that account every month for the next, 20 years or something like that. So now instead of 60 years, in 20 years, you end up with $3.2 million US, because you increased the capital that was going in there, and so the compounding increased with it, right? Now, could you do that by just like making monthly payments instead of using a bond ladder? Yes, but if you're making monthly payments and you're an American, that could trigger a grantor trust situation where now you have all this tax liability and blah 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 blah, right? So if you're maintaining a non-grantor situation, you don't want any American assets flowing into the offshore trust, right? And that's where the bond comes in, because the bond is a security paying from the Central Bank of Kenya directly into your offshore trust. So it's not an American asset, and it's not your asset. It's owned by the trust, right? So the bonds are purchased in the name of the trust. So that helps maintain your non-grantor status. I really do got to figure out why it won't show you the better picture of that house. That's really weird. I'll have to look into that later with our social media person. Oh, that's interesting. So when I'm looking for a picture, you guys get a pause screen, huh? That's very interesting. Yes. Okay. So that's the 4 bedroom. To answer your question, yes, you can upgrade to a 4 bedroom, but it changes the pricing dramatically. This the square footage of this particular house is what is it? I think it's 2,600 square feet or something like that, whereas the other one was 1,600 square feet. So for the end of year special one, where you're doing the house and the immigration and it's all like inclusive and all that, it's 185,000. But if you upgrade it to this, it it would be more, a lot more, because it's double the house. Even though there's 4 bedrooms and the other one has 3 bedrooms, this one has like a library and a bunch of other rooms that could potentially be bedrooms. If you don't want a library and a kitchen and a chef's kitchen and a da 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 da, but it's a much bigger house. So our suppliers that send us our our shingles and our cabinets and our doors and our windows and all our construction supplies, we priced out what it would be with them, and then they set us up with a situation where we could offer you that crazy price. Let me see if I can show it to you. It's a good question though, but let me see if I can show it to you. Jesus, it really won't let me. I don't know what that's about. I really got to look into that and figure out what's going on with that. Okay, let's see here. That one. Okay. So in the corner, in the bottom right corner, that house is under construction. That is one of the houses that are in the end of year special. So that's the skeleton of it. That's the guts of it. When it's done, it'll look like that picture. All right, what else? How much money do you need to get a bond? I guess it depends on what your goals are. Our end of year people, they're looking to have enough money coming off the bond to not have to work again for the rest of their life. So that's a very specific number. Technically, you can get a bond for like 400 bucks. It's not gonna, you know what I mean? It's not gonna pay you enough that you ain't got to work again. But technically, the minimum to buy into the bond is about $400. So you can get a bond for 400 bucks if you want. But it depends on what your end goal is. Like this is the bond that our clients are getting this month. Actually, they'll get it next month, but this is the one that their trusts have purchased, the second bond, the 25-year bond. But there's only 17 years left. It's a reopen. So there's 17 years left. Our target's always 10 years. And so all of our clients will be getting 1 million local currency of this bond as one of their rungs in their bond ladder. So this rung will pay in June and December. Last month's bond paid in April and September. So the folks that sold out in the first sellout of the special, they already have April and September money coming in for the next. That one was 15 years, so they're at 15 years now, as they're low, and so they have April and September, and now they have June and December. So they need 3 more quarters of the year until they have passive income coming in every single month. And that's why the end of year special ends in February, so that we have enough time to get them every single month of the bond so that they have money coming in every month. First time here, interested in learning about bond ladders. Yeah, so the bond ladders are fairly simple. What ends up happening with them is Kenyan treasury bonds give incredible interest rates. I think I can I? Yes, I can. Okay, hold on. So here, it looks like I can only zoom. I can't like move it side to side. Oh, I can. All right. So here you can see that the interest rate on this particular bond is 13.4%, right? The interest rate on the S&P 500 is 10%, right? So our clients are getting better interest on a bond, which is the safest investment that exists, all right, than you would get on the stock market, which is way more volatile than a government bond, obviously, right? So for the next 17.3 years for this particular bond, they will be getting that payment twice a year, right? Every 6 months. So in order to get them passive income for all 12 months, we have to buy 6 bonds. Now, sometimes we get lucky. Let me see if I can show you an example of that. Sometimes we're really lucky and we get a month like this. Is this? Oh, okay. So days zoomed in. Okay. Learn how to work this thing. Okay. So in this month, this was great for our folks because this month they dropped both bonds. They always drop 2 bonds, per auction. So this month they had dropped both bonds And one of them was 21.8 years. The other one was 13.2 years. The 13.2 year one was 12.8730%. The 21 year one was 14.18880%. So both of them were above our target of 10% ROI, right? So, and then one of them was, I believe it was March and, what is it? March, it's either March and August, and the other one was January and July, right? So this month, our clients got two bonds in the same month that pay out in different months at an entire quarter of the year in 1 month, right? So that was just a lucky month where we did really, really well for our clients. And, it cut down their bond ladder creation time by about a month. So sometimes, if we're lucky, in like 4 months, your entire bond is ready to rock. Typically, it takes us like a year, though. And yeah, that auction is done. Yes. So that was actually the end of year auction. It made it brilliant because what ended up happening was we did our end of year special, which we sold out of at when this bond came out actually. So people bought the entire package, and then we were scrambling to get them both of these bonds, and then beyond there. What ended up happening was the next month was really, really good as well, but only on one side. And so they ended up with, what is that, 3 months, 3 months of passive income already, acquired in 2 months time. So that was really, really great for them. But it doesn't happen all the time. And sometimes we'll skip a month because it doesn't hit our threshold. We want to make sure that you're getting 10% ROI. So if one pops up that doesn't hit the 10%, which that's never actually happened, but what does happen is it'll be beneath the 10-year threshold. So we want you to have money for at least 10 years, and we want you to have 10% ROI on that money, or else we're not gonna place it in the trust. So those are the criteria. And so when we don't see a 10-year ROI, unless it's an infrastructure bond, right? Because if you've been following for a while, you know what that means. Infrastructure bonds are tax exempt. There's no tax. So if it's an infrastructure bond, that's when we make an exception, and we'll buy like an 8-year infrastructure bond instead of making sure that it meets the 10-year cap. So yeah, that's that. Take this guy down since it's old. I was just showing you guys an example. This is the newest one. So you can see that first one. Let's see if I can zoom in. Yeah. That first one does not meet our criteria, right? That first one, there's only 8.4 years left on it. So we would not acquire, at least we would not automatically acquire that one. What ends up happening is once you have your first ladder, then the years don't necessarily matter on the second ladder, right? If you want to have a second ladder. So we'll have folks call us up and be like, hey, I'm wiring you some money right now. Go ahead and get that 8.4 year because I like the 12.3%. You know what I mean? So if that becomes the case, then we'll go ahead and do it. But it's not part of like the end of year special. End of year special is to get you your 12 months of passive income where you don't have to work if you don't want to work, and you're covered. And part of the key to that is the fact that we're building you a brand new house. If you don't have the house, then like 50,000 a month target may not cover all of your expenses if you're paying rent. If you own the house and you're not paying rent, then you're absolutely covered. And again, that's in the area where we're building the houses. There are different costs of living everywhere. So if you're trying to live in Nairobi on 50,000 a month, I mean, you can do it. Locals do it, but you don't necessarily want to live like that, right? So it's gonna be hard on you to do it. Whereas down here at the beach, it's you're living your best life. Actually, last year no new bonds. Last year, every single bond that we bought our clients was a reopening. They didn't release any new bonds last year. Every single one was a reopened bond that had been previously released, which is good because what we're doing is we're trying to get as many people in with guaranteed passive income as we possibly can before the rates go back down to normal, right? It's obviously not normal for a bond to give better interest than the S&P 500, right? So that's obviously not a normal thing. So before the rates go back down to normal, we're trying to get as many people in here and funded and essentially financially free if they want to be, with the current bond structure. So every time they reopen a bond, you're almost guaranteed to have great interest because it's a bond that's being reopened from that great interest era, right? We don't know what the current interest era is. They didn't open a new bond at all last year. And I don't expect them to open a new bond this year. I don't think they're going to open a new bond until after the election, which is good for us. The election is 2027. So this ends up being the last year. And remember, it takes a minimum of 6 months, typically takes about 11 months to build a bond ladder. So just because next year is when the new bond rates might go down and you want to be locked in on the old bond rates this year, doesn't mean you got a year to wait because we can't control it. It's controlled by the central bank. So get in where you fit in, or you're going to be sitting here next year when the rates go down to 6%, wishing you would gotten a safe investment that has the lowest risk of any investment product. Period. I mean, just Google the risk of a government treasury bond versus the risk of any other kind of investment, and you'll see what we're talking about. Or call your CPA and ask them, or call your lawyer, or call your broker, or whoever, and ask them. If you don't know how relatively safe bonds are, but to be getting bonds at sometimes double the return on investment of the S&P 500 is nuts, and it will not last. So the people who are in, and then when it changes, the people who are out are just shit out of luck. So do not sleep on the bond ladder. If you want it and you want to be getting these crazy ROIs, now is the time to do that for sure. What do you do with so the payments, it depends on like what your end game is. We have some people that are doing generational wealth trusts, right? So their end game is set up a trust for like their babies or their grandbabies, and that's the point of it. Well, those people, they're reinvesting the money from the bonds, right? So when they do a bond ladder, that bond ladder goes into the trust, and then when it goes into the trustee takes it out and invests it in something else with really good interest, right? Currently, those are special funds. So like Oak Special Fund, ArvoCap Special Fund, actually ArvoCap Strategic Special Fund. There's Kava Strategic Special Fund. There's Mansa X Special Fund. Those special funds have been paying out north of 20% ROI, but they are market funds, right? So there is risk. It's like being on the stock market. It's like an IFT type of thing, or a money market fund, or a mutual fund. There's risk. You can lose everything. So the bonds become their base. The bonds are like their guaranteed monthly money, and then they create what's called a DRIP. DRIP stands for Dividend Reinvestment Plan, right? So DRIPs are designed in percentages. So they'll either say, okay, I want a 50% drip, I want a 100% drip, I want an 80% drip. So that means 80% of the money that comes in guaranteed from the bonds would then be reinvested across the things they want to invest in, right? So most people diversify at that point. So they'll have some real estate, some REITs, some money market funds, some IFTs, some special funds. So they'll diversify the profits from the bonds. Remember, at the end of the bond, at a bond maturity, you get all your money back. It's not like a stock, right, where your money is absorbed into the equity of the stock. So if the stock crashes, all your money crashes, blah 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 blah. With the bond, you're going to get your money back at the end. So plus, right? So the monthly passive income is what you're using to build out, either your generational wealth or what you using to live off of, and then at maturity you get all the money back. Okay, unless there's an amortization, then you still get all the money back, but you get it back in tranches along the way. Typically, the infrastructure bonds are amortized. So if you get an infrastructure bond because it's tax exempt, they amortize you out slowly over the life of the bond. So the amount of money you paid in originally is not the amount of money you have at the end. They've given you some of your money back along the way, right? So that's how those are our typical use cases, right? So we either have a business use case where somebody opens a business, like we just had a client open an Airbnb duplex. So we built the Airbnb for her, set all of that up. So now the Airbnb is up and running. And then instead of getting nickel and dimed for the first year or two until the Airbnb starts making money, where, they're calling her, we need toilet paper, we need new bed sheets. So somebody was smoking and they burnt the bed sheets. Or, we need to clean the walls, or, the toilet's clogged, we need a plumber. Well, she just has the bonds in there paying money into the corporate account, as owner's capital, right? So it's going into the corporate account, and that becomes her runway. So that is what she's paying her people off of. So their paychecks are coming off of that. Any maintenance for the property and any of that stuff is coming off of that. The security guard that's at the gate letting people into the Airbnb, their salary is paid from that. So now it's like a set it and forget it business, because she done bought these bonds. The bonds are 10-year long, you know what I mean? Like this one is what, 17 years left to maturity, right? So she's buying these bonds and has 10 years of just money coming in, and she doesn't have to worry about supporting that business in its infancy stages. By the time, the bond is done, the business will be 10 years old and mature in its own right and be able to run itself, right? So that's the business use case that a lot of people on the business side are using, where they're coming in and like, all right, my runway is going to be, the bonds. The folks who are relocating, they just live off of the bonds, and then they don't have to work. And then for their generational wealth trust clients, they use the bond to accelerate the compounding of the money that's in the trust for their kids or their grandkids. So those are our three use cases. I'm sure there are people out there who have completely separate use cases, beyond the pale of what we do. So I'm sure there's plenty more use cases out there, just not stuff that we particularly deal with. All right. Yeah, no problem. How do I get an account with the Bank of Kenya? Hold on. Let me scroll up to that. How do I get an account with the Bank of Kenya? Do I have to live in Kenya? You do not have to live in Kenya. So, and it depends. It depends on how we're doing it, like what kind of client you are, right? So, like if it's generational wealth client, we would do it differently than a relocation client, and we would do it differently than a business client. So it just depends on what kind of client you are. But there are multiple ways for us to get an account with the central bank for you. Wait, what is that? Kenya question mark. I missed whatever you put before Kenya question mark. Do I have to live in Kenya? And then the next thing was Kenya question mark. So I don't know what the Kenya question mark was. Are the taxes different for each type of client? Not for the bonds. So the bond taxes are not different. No. But the tax situation of each type of client is different, right? Because if you have a business, then you have corporate taxes, right? So there's going to be corporate taxes on the business and all that stuff. If you're making a profit, the corporate taxes are only on profit, so that's great. So they have a different tax situation. If you're doing generational wealth trust, the generational wealth trust has no active taxes, right? So, like there's withholding tax. So, like as you can see with the bond that's pictures up right now, right underneath the 13.4% of return on investment, there's a 10% withholding tax. Well, that's 10% of the 13.4, not 10% of like what's in the bond, right? So let's say, I don't know, there's a million in the bond. If there's a million in the bond, then you're getting 134,000 every year cut into two payments, right? So it would be 10% of that, right? So it would be whatever the what is it 1340, right? So that would be your the tax that you're paying, right? And then you would get the rest deposited into your bank account. So it comes in advance. It's what's called a final tax. So what ends up happening is the government would send you a withholding tax certificate at the end of the year that showed that you paid the withholding tax, which is a final tax, right? And when you're doing your tax return, they can't be like, oh, you underpaid, you overpaid, you owe us some more, you don't owe us enough. Like that doesn't happen anymore. So you got the withholding tax certificate, you submit the withholding tax certificate, your taxes are done, right? So it's pretty easy for the trust fund folks. And then for the relocation folks, same thing. It's super easy because when you relocate with the intention of dual citizenship, then that means that you're utilizing a Class K permit. A Class K permit does not come with the authority to work. So they don't expect you to be making active income. Passive income is fine, but you're not supposed to make active income in country while you're here. So they don't expect you to have a tax liability. So on that side, it's the same thing. You would have your withholding tax certificates. When it comes to the end of the year, you would go ahead and file your withholding tax certificates, and those taxes would already be paid. Now, there is something called the foreign tax credit, right? Because just because like it's super simple and you don't have to like cut any checks for tax time doesn't mean you didn't pay tax. You did. You paid the 10% withholding tax, right? So at the end of the year, when you get all those tax certificates and you submit that tax return to Kenya, you don't owe anything to Kenya. Your taxes are already paid. However, the FTC says that if you have any taxable liability in the United States and you're abroad, FTC stands for foreign tax credit. You can deduct the taxes paid dollar for dollar against your US tax liability. So now that passive income, 10%, taxes that you're paying every year, you can go back to the US and there's a chance you got to talk to your financial people of the US, your tax people, but there's a chance that you can deduct up to 90%, right? So you can deduct that tax dollar for dollar up to 90%. So it can actually give you some tax, savings on the U.S. side if you still have like an Airbnb out there, or if you just have some sort of tax liability out there that you have to deal with, you would be able to offset it with the taxes paid on the Kenyan side. So that's been helpful to a lot of folks, especially a lot of folks who are like in retirement, right? Because depending on how your retirement funds were set up, it might have been pre-tax, right? So then if your retirement funds, if you're doing a 401k and it's pre-tax, right? Then when you're getting your retirement, you're getting taxed on that, right? So if you have a credit that can get you some savings on the taxes that are coming out even in retirement, that could be helpful. That's definitely something to talk to your CPA about. But yeah, on this side of things, it's super simple. If you're not American, it's incredibly simple. Because if you're not American, there's a very small chance that you're being taxed for citizenship. Only Americans, North Koreans, and Eritreans get taxed for citizenship. So if you're doing business with us and you're not American, there's a slim chance that you have to file taxes in your home country. So it's really an American issue. Hey, Monica, how's it going? Uh, Somewhat, yes. You can go over to our website. All of our live streams are on business pages, so the website is in the bio. You can go over to our website, and our website is essentially an assessment portal, right? So you can go to our website, you can take the assessment of the things that you're interested in, and the website will literally tell you right then and there whether you qualify or not. Um, if like something went wrong, because sometimes people will like pick the wrong thing or they didn't understand the question or whatever. So typically one of our lawyers will still like just reach out to you, be like, hey, this is why you didn't qualify. If that was a mistake, or you didn't mean to pick that, or you thought that option meant something else, we can kind of talk about it, or we can give you kind of like the guidelines on how to become qualified in the future, and go from there. Sometimes we're not taking new clients. We used to do that to kind of protect the quality of our product, essentially. Um, However, with the way things that have been going in the United States, there has been an extreme, overwhelming request for us to kind of temporarily lift that, and just take on as many clients as we can. And so we are responding to that, and taking on more clients. We're still not taking just unlimited clients. We're still want to make sure that we're providing quality, but we're definitely taking a lot more right now. We are currently onboarding, just because of how many people want to get out of the U.S. really, really quickly. So there's that. So you'll be able to tell though when you go to our website. Down at the bottom, there'll be a light. If it's flashing green, then we're taking clients. If it's flashing yellow, then we're really close to not taking on new clients. And if it's red, then we're not taking clients right now. So it's pretty easy to tell. Um, and yeah, that's it. So very kind of low impact, um, you don't have to pay for the assessments or anything like that. So you can go in, take the assessment, see where you stand, and then if you qualify, then you can go ahead and pay for one of our consultations with one of our lawyers or somebody on the legal team, um, and then go from there. So fairly simple process. Yeah, there'll be three assessments. Yeah. There's an assessment for people who are relocating. There's an assessment for people who are trying to do, like generational wealth. And there's an assessment for people who are doing mergers and acquisitions, and they're trying to, um, you know, purchase businesses out here and all of that stuff. Yes, there's no charge for the assessment. You can go take the assessment right now, and typically within 48 hours, somebody from our team will respond to you. Will respond to the assessment. Oh yeah, you've been around for a while, huh? Yeah. There was a time where our the assessment went down, so we actually rebuilt the entire website. So if you go back to the website, it doesn't even look the same. So the assessments are pretty solid now. But yeah, that was, I forget what the current American administration did, but they did something, and then like 10,000 people took the assessment at the same time and crashed our crashed our server. So there's a lot of people who want to get out of the United States right now. And every time someone is unalived in Minnesota, or every time something crazy happens, we get a hit on our servers. That's wild, right? Tens of thousands of people each and every time. So we've had to reinforce our servers. We'd have to increase our bandwidth. We changed our website, like the whole nine, because there's a lot of people leaving the United States right now. Just they're not talking about it. There's actually a creator on TikTok. I don't know if you're watching me on YouTube. I don't know if she's on YouTube, and I can't think of her name, but search it out. But there's a creator that points out that like America purposely has no statistics on who's leaving, only like the people trying to get in. But other countries have statistics on who's applying for citizenship and residency, and so she's like gathering those statistics to get the numbers. And I like she showed it was something like 50,000 people had applied for Irish citizenship the month that she looked, like not for the year, like for that month. Ireland had reported that like 50,000 people had, and this is just citizenship. Like how many people applied for residency, how many people applied for, you know what I mean? So she's like jumping around the world and seeing the millions of people that are actually just leaving the United States right now, and it's crazy. So we see a bit of that as well. We only deal with Kenya, so we know we're only seeing a snapshot of it, but tens of thousands of people are hitting us up, and most are not qualified, which really sucks. But a lot of people are trying to leave. Got to be able to afford it though. Like we just and what sucks is there are people out there who will take your money. We won't set you up for failure. Like if you can't afford it, we're just going to tell you like, look, we took a look, we thought of everything that we could think of. There's no way to make you afford this. You're setting yourself up for failure. Like don't come to another country and go bankrupt. You know what I mean? But there are unscrupulous, and unscrupulous people out there that'll just take your money, get your, your visa filed, maybe get you a permit, maybe because typically if you don't meet the qualifications, then in the permit background they'll notice that and deny your permit, but maybe get you a permit and then you're stuck. It's the worst case scenarios is you actually get through in a situation like that where you really don't qualify. But there are people that just take money and do it. So be careful, guys. Be careful. The only other legitimate relocation service in Kenya that we can recommend is Traverse Culture. So if you're looking for a different organization, a different vibe, or something like that, Traverse Culture is legitimate. Like they do everything the right way, they do everything the legal way. They have all their permits in place and all of that. They're operating business legally in this country. You got people out here that just jumped and don't really qualify and can't really afford to be here, and they're operating illegally. They do not have an investor permit to operate a business out here. They do not have, um, a permit to be living here that's maybe not an investor permit, and then they're running business in a different way. That's okay too. You know what I mean? If they're not actually running business from here or whatever. But typically that is not happening, right? So typically they're illegal, and then the way like chains work here, it's different than the way that they might work in your home country. So what happens is when they get busted, everyone that they've assisted essentially gets busted. So it becomes pretty funky. Hold on. TikTok is asking me to verify something here. All right, there we go. But yeah, so you don't want to get caught up in like losing your permit because the person who processed it was fraudulent. All right, so just be careful. Be careful with that stuff. It's and a lot of them like be careful with people with that have a religious angle. For some reason, the majority of like the scammers have this religious angle to them, um, where they're part of some religious group that you know I don't know. I guess all religions think that their people are the saved people or the chosen people or the whatever, but they're weaponizing that to a certain extent. So be careful if your thought process is like, oh, they believe in the same thing as me, and therefore that's where I need to go. Just double think that, because I can't think of a scammer that doesn't have like a religious angle, even if it's like super light and they're just God bless you all the time. You know what I mean? And they're not necessarily repping a specific thing. They all do that. And I don't know what that's about, but they all have this like weird religious take on everything. Or spiritual. It might be like, oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Like, That thing is, all the scammers do that. I'm not saying everybody who does that is a scammer, but all the scammers do that. So be careful. Yeah, our law firm is only licensed in Kenya, so we only do Kenyan relocation. Now, as far as our generational wealth division is concerned and our estate planning division is concerned, if people are doing asset protection trusts, not generational wealth trusts, but asset protection trusts, we do those in different countries. So then that depends on what it is that they're trying to protect and which laws they need and all of that stuff. So that stuff can drift off into other countries. We'll do business representation in other countries as well. So like we set up, but we have to onboard those people in Kenya, right? So we still have to onboard them in Kenya. But we had a Kenyan client that we then did a pharmaceutical manufacturing company in Sierra Leone for. But we don't start doing business in any other country. It has to start in Kenya, with the exception of the asset protection trust, of course, and like family offices and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a very specific client. That's like, it's interesting. It's like maybe maybe 5% of our clientele is in that bucket, but they're responsible for like, it's almost like taxes, right? It's like 5% of our clients are in that bucket, but they're responsible for like 50% of our income, which the same thing, like the richest people, even though they might pay a smaller percentage of taxes, you go look at all taxes paid, they're paying the most taxes. So even though maybe their tax rate is effectively 6%, they're still paying like 50% of all the taxes that are paid. It's one of those types of things where like they're not they're not the largest chunk of our clientele, but they're definitely the largest chunk of our profit base. Yeah, yeah, it's just typically the way it works. They're typically generational wealth clients that are focused on family offices and passport portfolios. So they'll come on board, start with the offshore trust for generational wealth, and then they'll start collecting passports to gain access into multiple capital markets. And then they'll have a long term plan for their family. And it typically ends in Singapore, typically, where their family office will be registered in Singapore. Excuse me. And then they will find the female member of the family, typically put her through school, get her MBA, maybe even a doctorate in business, definitely like a CPA, an accounting degree, all of that. So the family will pay for all of that stuff, and then she will take over the family office and run it out of Singapore. And it's always a woman because eventually that person gets Singapore citizenship. And when you get Singapore citizenship, there are two things that happen. First thing is you have to renounce all your other citizenships, so that sucks, but they give you enough incentives to make it worth your while. And then the next thing that happens is if you're a man, there's mandatory military service. So that's why all of the families that are strategic make sure it's a woman so that they're exempt from the mandatory military service and they can just start running the family office right away. The path to Singapore, though, is different for each person. And some people don't even end up in Singapore, but a healthy majority of them do. No, it wasn't always Singapore. It used to be the British Virgin Islands, but Singapore like crushed them. Like the incentives that they offered and the tax incentives and all that, it wouldn't even make sense to go to the British Virgin Islands anymore. So Singapore knew what they were doing, and they made themselves the premier destination for family offices. For very specific things, like some people still go to like AUE sometimes or whatever for the family office. I guess it depends on what the family's business is and what you're like investing in. But for the most part, the vast majority of our clients end up in Singapore. All right, we have been here for over an hour. Any other questions on any of that stuff? Any other questions on any of that? How much is the end of the year special and what does it include? All right, the end of the year special is $185,000. It includes your immigration. It includes a brand new house that we will build for you. It's about 1,700 square foot. It includes a plot of land by the beach in Diani Beach, Kenya, which is where the house is built. And it includes the creme de la creme, the bond ladder. So it includes the 6 bond ladder that will provide a minimum of 50,000 Kenyan shillings a month in passive income for a minimum of the next 10 years. And then a trust that operates all of those things for you and manages some of the tax liability for you. So that is that. However, there's only 2 plots left. So there's only 2 plots to get into the end of year special left. We did sell out at the end of last year, and then we turned around and bought another acre so that we could provide 8 more plots, and there's only 2 of those 8 left. So we expect to definitely be sold out of that before we end it in on February 15th. Where are we ending? We're ending on February 15th so that we can get the bond ladder done. If we don't onboard you early enough in the year, then there's a chance that we get to the end of the year and the bond ladder isn't finished. So in order for us to make sure that you get your passive income within that first year by the time the house is built, because it's going to take us about 10 months to build the house, by the time the house is built, we want to make sure that your bond ladder is up and running and that that passive income is kicking in immediately. So that's why there's that limit of February 15th in order to make sure we get that bond ladder done. Good question, though. Any other questions? Any other questions? All right, looks like we are done. I will be changing format. I won't be going live all the time like this. So if you guys got questions, you want to engage with me directly, now is still the time to do it. But I'll be doing like a show format that'll launch on YouTube. And then maybe I'll be live on TikTok like while making the show. So TikTok folks might get like a behind the scenes type of deal. But we're going to just be launching like a more of a scripted show on YouTube with like highlights on TikTok or whatever. So you won't be seeing me live every day like you do now. Is there a different package for generational wealth? Yeah. So the end of year special includes the house and all that stuff. Typically, if you just want a bond ladder, it's 75,000, right? So 75,000 gets you all 6 bonds with a million local currency in each bond and all of that stuff. So people who are just looking for bond ladders, and then with generational wealth, 5,000 is also your passive income bond that's at a level that you can live off of, right? So with the 75,000, you could come here and live off of it if you own the house. If you don't own a house, it might not cover you. You may not need that much for a generational wealth trust, because typically a generational wealth trust is for your kids. It's not for you, or your grandkids, right? So you may not need as much if all you're trying to do is pay into generational wealth. Then so that's something that can be discussed, but that's not part of the special. So that's not a set price. So we can always go up and down and negotiate on that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Uh-huh. Thank you very much. First coffee of the day. Gotta love it. It's really my only. I only drink one cup of coffee these days. Try to be healthy. I gotta lose like 20 pounds. Anyway, I digress. So yeah. If you're doing a generational wealth trust fund, um, it just depends on how quickly you want mega money in that trust, right? So we have folks that'll do the 75,000 off the strength of like their kids are already like 10 years old, or the oldest one is already 10 years old, and they want money in there by the time that kid is 18. Well, all right. You know what I mean? Like if that's the focus, then we got to get aggressive and we got to like do this then. But if it's, we have people who come to us that just got married, ain't got no kids. You know what I mean? And they're like, all right, we want to set up the family and we want the family trust in place and all of that. We want to make sure that if for some reason the marriage doesn't work out, this trust is only good for our kids. So then the next new spouse, like they got to get their own trust, you know. And then, you know, maybe we're going to have babies in 5 years. And so then, you know, 18 years after that is when, you know, the first distribution or something like that might pop up. So it just depends on the planning. That's our lovely social media manager over there, Milka. No, Milka does not make the coffee. Milka, do you know how to make coffee? She knows how to make it, but she's not the one who made the coffee. McKenna made the coffee. All right. Well, that looks like it. I don't see any new questions coming in. If you got a question coming, just go ahead and hit enter, and then I'll give you time to like fix what needs to be fixed and whatever you were writing. Um, if you're about to ask a question, just put a one in the chat. I'll wait for you. But if not, it kind of looks like we're done. You guys can head over to the website, diasporaltd.com, diasporalimited.com, diasporaltd.com, or app.diasporaltd.com. And it's not a complicated website. You will see the assessments right away. We like to make things simple and streamlined. So you will see the assessments right away. Not a complicated website at all. And then one of our lawyers or somebody. Sometimes it's a freedom facilitator. Sometimes it's me, right? But somebody will get back to you within 48 hours of you doing an assessment, and the assessment will tell you immediately whether or not, you know, there's any qualification there at all based on what you say you want. Um, and then I think we have a bond. Do we have a bond calculator on there still? We have a bond calculator on there. There's 6 bonds to a ladder. So we have a bond ladder calculator. So the minimum amount of bonds that you can calculate is from 6. Um, and then you can like play with things inside there. Kind of let you see like what kind of money coming out of that bond. And then if you're compounding into a generational wealth trust, then you get to see like, oh, okay, so I'm compounding at, you know, this amount per year for the next 10 years because of the bond that I have. And then at the end, I get all the money back that I paid, you know, that was paid into the bond. So those are typically really, really good devices for people that want steady cash flow, right? They're not the people who are day traders or blue chips and all of that stuff. It's not for them, right? It's for the people who like want a guaranteed amount of cash every month for the next decade, for the next 2 decades. The maximum is 3 decades, right? So 30 years is the max in a treasury bond. And that's hard to find. So like if you try to design a plan around every single bond will be 30 years. Good luck with that. But it's nice. It's definitely nice. I will testify that it's definitely nice to not have to worry about money for the next 15 years. And when people give you a hard time, you flip them the bird and tell them to screw off because you don't have to worry about money for the next 15 years. And if you don't want to work, you don't work. And if you do want to work, you go work. And nobody can bother you because you don't have to worry about money for the next 15 years, right? So it is a beautiful position to be in. And a lot of us have the money to do it, but it won't work in the US. Like the money doesn't spend that way in the US. So when we take that money that we have saved up, or we take that money that's in a 401k or whatever, and we do it over here, that's what it works. Because even with like the 10% knock, if you took money out of like an investing account and you got hit with the 10% penalty, right? Like let's say you did it right now. We're in January. You don't have to pay that till next year. You don't have to pay it till next year tax time. So if you're getting 15% ROI here on that money and you're going to owe a 10% penalty once there, who's making out? If you're getting 15% on that money here and you're getting paid monthly and you can put the penalty to the side, but you're getting that for the next 15 years and you're only paying a one-time 10% penalty for withdrawing your money early, who's making out? Right? It's just math, right? It's just math, right? So a lot of folks, even with the penalty, like they don't care. They'll pull the money out, come over here, and live free for the rest of their life, right? And not only is the penalty due next year, it's the IRS. You can tell them I'm going to pay it over the next 10 years, right? You can negotiate with them. So definitely, a lot of folks who are just tired of the BS. Um, we'll go ahead and do like a full on end of year special. What's going on, cousin? DJ Debo, good to see you. Um, so, yeah, a lot of those folks will go ahead and do that and just come out here and live free for the rest of their life and just, you know, stop the nonsense. So, that's what we wanted to do. That's what we did. It is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing to get the monkey of money off your back. And yeah, that's it. All right. Any other questions on that? Any other questions on that? All right. It looks like we are good to go. We've been here for 1 hour and 20 minutes. So it looks like we're done. I'll give it I'll give it exactly that. We've been here for 1 hour and 18 minutes. I'll let it get to 120. And then if I don't see any questions, I will wrap it up and head to the beach. It's actually a really, really, really great day because it's cloudy, overcast. So it's only like 80 degrees, which, is great. So yeah, be able to walk up and down the beach without the sun leaning on me. How close am I to it? I'm across the street. Just walk across the street to it. Hmm. How close? Actually, the area for the end of year special, I'm moving there like next month. So I'll actually be living in the same neighborhood as everybody who got the end of year special. We'll all be like right next to each other. So I myself am like moving there. So that's how good that area is. Anything else? We are at 1 hour 20 minutes. I don't see anything else. So I guess I'm gonna call it. All right, Freedom Family, thanks for hanging out with me for at least the next week. I'm here every day live at this time, so I will see you tomorrow at this time, and then we will transition into that show I was talking about. And then whenever, because we can record the show at any time and then set it to premiere on YouTube. So whatever the show is being recorded, I may go live and like give you guys behind the scenes, but it's not going to be the same time like it is now. So you know, we'll see how that works out. But you'll definitely see some of the clips on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and Fanbase. But it will launch on YouTube. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you guys tomorrow.